The exact same information gets absorbed and processed in very different ways based on somebody's partisan identity. And so what you find, for instance, is that Republicans right now say that the state of the economy is much worse than do Democrats, right? And there's this partisan bias. There's been a lot of people who have said, you know, Bush is very polarizing, Obama is very polarizing because of their leadership styles, because of the policies they've pursued, because of their governing strategies, when in fact, some degree of polarization is inevitable simply because of biased information processing on the part of the electorate. We expected polarization on this based on partisan identities, but were there some limits to that? And in fact, we found some limits to that, and that is that Republicans were more likely to become opposed to healthcare reform over the course of the debate between 2008 and 2010. But Republicans who worried about healthcare expenses, right? Republicans who had some interest in having a healthcare reform in the United States were actually much less inclined to change their attitudes to oppose healthcare reform. You've had this group of Americans who have been particularly hard hit by the recession, people who have lost their jobs or lost their homes or had a family member who have lost a job. And in many respects, you would think that self-interest would actually move them closer to Obama's policy preferences, right? If they're changing their attitudes, then they should become more liberal in their policy preferences. And there is some evidence of that. But at the same time, in contrast to Australia, where there's compulsory voting, what we're also finding is that the same people who have been hardest hit by the recession are actually becoming incredibly disgruntled with politics, right? So that it's that they might have policy views that are more closely aligned with Obama, but they also blame both parties for not fixing the problem. They're more likely to say that they're no longer politically interested. They don't care as much about who wins the election. They're less likely to think there's a difference between the political parties and are less inclined to vote in the 2012 election. People carry around in their heads all of these different considerations, right, that they have to bring to bear in making their candidate selection. And what a strategic candidate is going to try and do is to introduce an issue, a wedge issue that favors them, right? So this means that a Republican might reach out to, who's pro-life, might reach out to pro-life Democrats, try to make salient the abortion preference, and that way they'll vote against their party and for them, right? They'll help to inspire that defection. That's much more difficult to do when you communicate that message and the voter says, I don't care, all I care about is the economy,